Hello, everyone. So Sven Rajala, work at Keyfactor, been doing PKI over 18 years now, which is kind of weird. Would have never thought I got here. Anyways, the International PKI Man of Mystery comes from just traveling all the time, that people would always wonder where I'm at work, responding at all kinds of weird hours of the day of where I was at. So I just made some kind of fun title like that, because a lot of times PKI can be pretty dry and boring, so it's fun to lighten it up. So getting into that, with the transition that's been coming, we've had elliptic curve and RSA forever and a day. And then we had these candidates which had these awesome names, dilithium, Kyber, and Sphinx Plus, where dilithium and Sphinx Plus are your digital signatures, and Kyber is your new way to encrypt in the new world. And then those get standardized, and we get these epically boring names, like MLDSA, SLHDSA, and MLChem. And this list will grow as well as more candidates are finalized. For instance, like HQC has been added by NIST as a backup to MLChem. And then there's also Falcon, which is still in draft, which would become FNDSA. And these are kind of they're really your new playing pieces for the post-quantum world of what you'll see transitioning from your classical algorithms to the post-quantum. This is probably a buzzword that you hear a little bit too much today. Crypto agility, and really you're looking at that as a way to be able to move from where you're at to something else in an easy, low-risk way. And I guess the importance of that is really being able to leverage a crypto library in your solutions. That way you're not doing proprietary implementations of cryptography, and you'll be allowed to change and adapt as all these specs change. Because we're going from a world where you had the 20 years of elliptic curve and RSA like this to we've got these new post-quantum, but there's more candidates coming, and you're going to need this agility to be able to change a lot more based on use case. So getting into the kind of pillars of looking at this from the one side, like we talked about, migration, not using hard-coded pieces in your code like that, having a library. Another fun one is with chems and the transition of moving from like Diffie-Hellman into the chem world, where you used to be able to have a multi-party conversation when you're talking on the network. That's going away now. Now it's just a one-to-one. So each person you want to talk to, you have to negotiate with them alone. So the two-party side. But in some ways, when you look at the diagram of how that works, it's actually a lot simpler with chems of just sending over your public key, and then they send you the ciphertext back encrypted, and you can decrypt it, where Diffie-Hellman you had to do all this other stuff. A lot more in the diagram. So it's actually, to me, simpler, but I guess there's complexities in all the other parts of how that's going. Then from the migration, risks, and dependencies, a big thing to be thinking about there is knowing all the software and applications you have today. Are those vendors of those platforms thinking about post-quantum 2 to migrate their code to be able to leverage this stuff? Because you don't want to be caught where you have all this old stuff and you're operating in the new world, and then this is some critical application that can't support it, and now you've got this massive compliance issue. Then obviously there's a lot of planning that goes into this, and you need to know what use cases you do have and how crypto is being used, and having the inventory to be able to migrate this stuff, and then leveraging automation to get there. If you've ever talked to me before anywhere or seen the presentations I've done elsewhere, I'm a big fan of protocol, and especially open standards, the IETF RFCs like this, ACME, EST, CMP. Using protocols instead of proprietary implementations are huge. That's going to give you maximum interoperability and allow you to move from classic to post-quantum or to whatever else will come. And then lastly, the operational impacts. Post-quantum, they are definitely bigger keys than the traditional side, so that is going to increase your compute requirements. Not so much of a problem for our mobile phones and laptops, but all the IoT devices, that's going to be problematic of how we're going to solve those problems for stuff that's out there. And you get things that are out there for like 20 years sometimes, and I don't know what we're going to do for that yet. And obviously that's going to keep evolving. And then obviously having plans of what you have and migrating and being able to decommission all your old stuff, that's an important thing to consider too. So then we look at some of the PKI hierarchy options you have with migrating. I guess we could kind of break this up a little bit, which would be fun, where NSA and the US federal side has said, just go complete, have a whole PQ system. Then there's the transitional where you can run a PQ, CA with your classic and kind of operate each other and move use case over one at a time. Then there's the hybrid, where you could have the classical algorithm with the post-quantum in the same certificate. So that way, if the system doesn't understand the PQ extensions, you just fall back to classic. Okay, fine. They're bigger certs like that, but we can ignore the PQ if we don't understand it. And then composite, which is really kind of taking off because you have ANSI and BSI that have advocated for the composite cert, and Microsoft came out, I think 3 weeks ago, with an article now saying that they're also advocating for composite, but the US side has been, they're still pure PQ and not so much a fan of the composite side. And so now we kind of get into what those hybrid certificates are. So the hybrid, in that case where you had the classic and the post-quantum in the certificate, also known as catalyst, is they're just non-critical extensions. So to not get too in the weeds if you're not a PCAP, it's really just saying if there's an extension in the cert like this and I don't understand what it is, I can ignore it. Otherwise, if it was marked critical, you have to fail what you're doing and you can't use it. So it breaks the whole use of PKI at that point. So pretty simple. I mean, you could swap out any certs today with hybrid, and anything that just doesn't understand it's going to ignore it. It'll just be a bigger certificate. Then you get the composite side, and the composite on this one is really important at that point, that you do leverage a crypto library to be able to do these. Because from a composite perspective, you can take ECDSA and MLDSA, and you use both of those together, but they present on top as a single key. But there's all this craziness going on underneath about using the two sides of that to do the one key. And that's what I've seen some of the bigger e-commerce places come out now that they've been asking us to like put that in EGBCA, where they want to do composites, even though the draft isn't finished yet in IETF. So that's actually going to be pretty interesting with composite, and especially Microsoft. If that's their push, then kind of everything's going to go with it at that point, because they kind of own the landscape for the enterprise. Then there's Delta. This was actually another cool one that some of my buddies that I've met over the years have done, from DigiCert, Entrust, and David Hook. And that's another extension in the certificate for it. But what's actually cool is the post-quantum, or the other key in this case, is tied to a separate serial number. So you could actually revoke the outer cert, but your inner cert and they're still good, or revoke the inner cert, but the outer cert is still good. And you could actually mix those both ways, where it could be post-quantum on the outside and classic on the inside, or post-quantum, or classic post-quantum. I guess it's quite flexible. It's pretty cool. It's still in draft, and it may come out. And the last one was more from NSA, but that actually is full RFC now, so they didn't update the slide yet. But that one's more about bootstrapping an identity that you had to then just be able to go and enroll for the other certificate. And then we did do a demo, but it's kind of long, so it's online. And if you go to the docs.keyfactor.com/EGBCA and the tutorials there, we have the demo with all the steps about setting up a hybrid root and sub-CA, and then configuring a CMP alias to then be able to issue a ML-Chem to do SMIME encryption with. And then we have a bunch of other demos online as well for our other products of Sign Server and Bouncy Castle Kotlin project. So we've got a lot of material out there for you to be able to go and play with post-quantum and start trying out some of the stuff and seeing what fun you can have with it. And then looking ahead, you know, things are going to change. Even though we've got these pieces here already, things are still evolving. You know, like composites have come a long way, for instance, from where they originally were to where they are now. And really, you want to begin testing and having that inventory to knowing what you have, and start planning your use case migration. And we'll have updates on our PQC lab at Keyfactor as well if you want to get any updates. And that's probably, useful links. There we go. And then big announcement that Bouncy Castle is celebrating its 25 years now. They had a little cake for David with this, which was really cool. If any of you ever listened to David, he's a brain on this stuff. One of the craziest guy I've ever met, with just the amount of wealth of knowledge he has, especially with Java and just cryptography. It's amazing if you ever get a chance to talk with him. And there we go. Thank you, everybody. Oh, we got a question. Two.
He didn't mean you, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess comment question. Quick note, David Wheeler, work at the Linux Foundation. We in the Linux Foundation also have the Post-Quantum Cryptography Alliance, again, working on post-quantum. Quick comment, both the lead of the Post-Quantum Crypto Alliance and myself have often advocated, where practical, to use what we've been calling hybrid, which is using both a PQC algorithm and a more traditional algorithm, and requiring both to work, because no matter what, the analysis of these algorithms is nowhere near the maturity of the more traditional algorithms. I'm sure you know the details, but there's been, depending on how you count, there's been at least widely known case where, yes, it's wonderful, and then somebody broke it. So so I'd like to hear your thoughts about the, trying to encourage using, where your resources make it possible, using both a post-quantum and also a traditional algorithm, and requiring both to get through to deal with the risks of algorithm breaks after the fact.
So this is where I see composite coming in, that some of the people have just come to us and said, this is why we want composite, to be able to do that.
Right.
So then you don't know under the hood necessarily what side of the composite, I guess, could be used, because you just know from the key up top that that's what's there. And having that, and Microsoft made the same statement that, yeah, we don't know enough, so that's why we're recommending composite too, so you can still mix the traditional with the post-quantum, and at least if one is solid, the other one's not, you can still trust one of them at that point. I'm still more of the fan of just based on use case where you're going to go. I don't see it that it's going to be a one-size-fits-all by any means, and I think it's going to be a hybrid. I think there's going to be a composite and other ones that come out, because PKI is just PKI. It's like I tell people, it's a Lego set. It's the same pieces, but everybody's doing something different with it.
Yeah, but I think for the folks who aren't really into this, they need very clear, where possible, do X, or at least know what the trade-offs are. And for a lot of folks, the big risk of these new algorithms is that they are new algorithms, and there's nothing we can do other than time and lots more analysis to deal with that problem.
Like analysis, and we need more cheat sheets coming out to say, if these are your use cases, these are the types you should be thinking about using for these, and then these are the performance impacts. Yeah. And there's a guy that, Mario Schreiner, he used to be at Airbus, I don't know where he went now, but he's got a GitHub repo out there where he did a bunch of comparisons of the sizes and made a bunch of recommendations on that. It was really nice. And shared it with I don't think do you associate with the PKI consortium at all? With their the PKI consortium?
I don't as much. The post-quantum crypto folks do, and Alliance folks do, I'm sure.
Okay, because then, yeah, there's usually a lot of information sharing in that working group over there.
I'm one of the few probably government employees here, because most of us can't travel because of what's going on right now. But we've had a requirement that everything must be IPv6 for a very long time. Only IPv6, not hybrid, just IPv6, and we don't. So similarly, I realize the government is saying that it's going to be all post-quantum, period, no hybrid, no composite. I would find it very surprising if that ever happened.
I get that. I think it's going to be more the government side that'll push that, and it'll happen. Commercial side, they'll do their thing, but from the federal side of all the people that I communicate with there, they're already testing actively with it. The various departments, and no, but they'll end up migrating with the systems over there that they're working with.
Hey, really glad you're touching on this. Thank you. You mentioned 4 different approaches to hybrid. I'm wondering whether you have any commentary on when you'd suggest which ones.
Right now, really the hybrid catalyst, because that's the one that's out there. Is that one. The composite, since they're still in draft and ever-changing, is, there's tests, but they're very canned and not interoperable at that point. And even with the way they've done the keys now, that's changed with, is anybody familiar with that? How originally it was you were just going to do the seed for MLDSA, but then they came through and changed the spec later in IETF now that you're going to get the seed and the full key. So it's like things are changing still a lot that you kind of got to pick, like hybrid, you could go with that, okay, and then just do all client-side key generation, and you should be okay with that, but it's so ever-changing that, hybrid's the easiest one to play with right now and just go with it, or full PQ if you wanted to as well, but then you have to have like OQS or other parts in there that can fully do all the PQ to do it. So it's still not very connected and interoperable, but you can do little pieces here and there to play with it. Anybody else? Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Marusha Supaya, formerly at NIST. I actually run the PQC migration project, so work closely with David Hook as well. So clarification for hybrid, the NSA, required to pure hybrid, but in federal agency, which NIST speak on behalf of those organizations, we are not asking people to pick one or the other. It's driven by use case and so on. So just want to clarify that. Yep.
I was going, what was it, the NSA 2.0, where they'd put in there like, no, yeah, and they're like no hybrid there, but see, it keeps changing, and that's good, so thank you.